Hey guys, it's Marissa. So in today's video, I'm actually going to be using one of the Milani palettes as my eye look today. And honestly, I'm using this as one of my least favorite palettes just to review it for you guys and why this is one of my least favorites. I really like all the shades in the palette, but most of them come off just very, very powdery. And they usually just like kind of wipe off really easily. Like there's just not very much pigment to it. A lot of like the shimmery shades, not so much the pressed glitters, those are like the best parts of the palette itself, but like these metallic-y colors, those kind of come off a lot darker too. Like as I'm going through the look, it kind of looks like I almost gave myself a black eye. Like it's just, they're very dark and they kind of just have a different tone in the shade itself once I apply it to my face, if that makes sense. The other thing too that I wish that they had was a better like highlight shade for your face or inner corners. This is the only shade that they have, and it might look a little bit bright on camera, but once it swatches on my skin, it's very dark and it's definitely not for lighter skin tone, so I wish they would have a lighter kind of color for that too. So if you wanted to see my overall thoughts on the palette, then just keep on watching. So before we start into the actual makeup look, I'm first going to be swatching the shades from the palette for you guys so you can see how chalky some of the shades can be. The first row that I'm swatching is Ethereal, Hush Hush, Peach Fuzz, and On Top. And then afterwards it is going to be the second row that I'm swatching, which is Slow Burn, Rose Sorry, Carrot, and Wait What. And I noticed that a lot of these shades, besides the nudes, swatched pretty like powdery, like they just swatched really weirdly, especially when it came to the pinks and other colored ones like the blues and stuff. The third row is Sangria, Old Fashioned, Overbaked, and Avec Moi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Some of the shade names are weird, but I noticed that Rose Sorry and Sangria both looked very similar. They kind of look like almost the same shade on camera, but maybe that's just me. And then I noticed that Overbaked swatched really weirdly. Like I noticed that there was some sort of weird streak on it, and I don't know why. But then the last row that I'm swatching is By the Glass, Femi, Wifey, and Bewitched, and I noticed that those glitter shades really were hard to swatch as well. Like once I picked it up on my finger, just all that pigment just stuck onto my finger and it did not want to swatch over onto my arm at all. And that's kind of how it was with the brush onto my eye look for today as well. And then I'm just using a plain tissue and literally everything just came off super easily. There was no water or makeup remover on it at all. So when I tell you these shades are powdery, they are very powdery. So the base for my eye look today, I'm actually going to be using my foundation as my primer as well, which is the Clinique Beyond Perfecting Foundation and Concealer. It's in the shade 0.5 Breeze, and I'm just going to be applying that using my finger onto my eyelid. Then I'm going to be setting everything down using the Airspun Loose Face Powder, which is a translucent face powder in the shade Naturally Neutral. And I'm just brushing off the excess using an Ulta blush brush. So as a transition shade, we're first going to be applying the shade Peach Fuzz from that palette, and I'm just going to be applying that to my crease and just buffing it out above it as well using the Morphe M321 brush. And this took me a very long time to just buff everything out because for some reason, you can't see it on camera, but it just really made my eyes look really dry and patchy because of how powdery everything was. And then some parts it would be more pigmented than others, so it would look kind of patchy as well too on my eye. And like just like how I said, it just really made everything look really dry and it just did not blend very well like how I wanted it to. So you really have to work a little bit more with these colors. The next shade that I'm going to be dipping into is the shade Bewitched, and I'm just going to be applying that to the crease of my eye. And I just really could tell as soon as I started placing it, it was a big mistake because it literally started to make my eye look like a purple color, like as if I was trying to make it look like a black eye. I have no idea why, but that's what was happening. So I kind of mixed that shade Bewitched and a little bit of By the Glass with a different Morphe brush, which was the Morphe M330 brush, and it still wasn't really working, so I was just kind of going with it at this point. And then with my finger, I applied the shade Wait What onto my eyelid, and it still wasn't really blending in. Some parts you can kind of tell it was patchy, so then I took a different brush, and the brush that I was using was the Morphe M167 brush, and on top of those patchy parts, I applied the shade Avec Moi, which is like a shimmery purple, and then over that, I just just try to blend everything in again using the Morphe M330 brush. I tried to create an elevated wing just to really try to clean up the look a little bit better. So the eyeliner that I was using was the e.l.f. Expert Liquid Liner in the shade Jet Black, and I never have a problem with this eyeliner, but whenever I was applying it onto this eye look, I noticed that afterwards that shimmery shade just really lost the pigment within that eyeliner, which never happens to me. So it was just really hard to work with for this eyeshadow, and it just kind of took me a couple of layers for it to really deepen up that black shade that I wanted from the eyeliner. And then I just cleaned everything else up using a makeup remover wipe. Then I'm going to be wiping down my face with any possible fallout that might have happened with a makeup remover wipe, and then afterwards I'm going to be priming it with the Pure Illuminating Lip Mist. Now, since I was using my least favorite eyeshadow palette for this look, I decided to use my least favorite foundation as well. And the foundation that I'm using is the Clinique Beyond Perfecting Foundation and Concealer in the shade 0.5 Breeze, and that is the same thing that I used as a primer for my eyes. The reason why I really don't like this foundation is because, well, it was my very first foundation that was like a big name brand, so I used it a lot, and I noticed after some time when experimenting with other foundations that this one really clogs my pores, and it also just oxidizes after a while. Like, it just turns my skin orange, and it's just very oily in general no matter how much stuff I set it on, like with setting powder, so it's really not my favorite. I don't really have a least favorite concealer of mine that I own, so I'm just going to be using the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer that I always use, but it's just like a really old bottle that I'm just trying to get the last of it out of. So I'm just applying that to the darkness of my face, any kind of darkness under my eyes or red spots that I might have, and I'm blending everything in using the Real Techniques Beauty Complexion Sponge. Then I'm just going to be setting my face using that same Airspun loose face powder. Then I'm going to be applying the Butter Bronzer in the shade 6676, and I'm just going to be applying that to my face and kind of contouring it as well using an Ulta blush brush. For blush, I'm going to be going back in with that palette in the shade Sangria, and I'm just going to be warming up my face with that, and really I didn't have too many complaints about it either. It actually worked really well as a blush. To fill in my brow, I'm going to be using the shades On Top and also Old Fashioned, and I'm just going to be filling that in using an angled brush. And it actually didn't look too bad, but it was a little bit on the warmer side for me. And then for my lower lash line, I'm going to be taking an e.l.f. concealer brush and just kind of buffing it out a little bit using the shade By the Glass. And then for my inner corner highlight, I'm taking the shade Ethereal, and I really didn't like how that looked for my skin tone, so then I just applied it with a different highlight afterwards. But then also I took the shade Wifey and I applied that to my eyelid as well, just to add a little bit more color to it, because I noticed that the shades were already starting to fade on me, and I just feel like there wasn't really that much color to it, so I just wanted to add a little bit more. Then I'm setting everything using the Morphe setting spray and just blending everything into my skin. For mascara, I'm going to be using the Ulta Beauty Maximum Lashes, which is the defining and lengthening mascara in the shade Jet Black, and I'm just going to be applying a few coats to my top and lower lashes. I'm also going to be taking an e.l.f. precision brush that has nothing on it, just so I can wipe away any kind of mascara clumps that might have fallen underneath my eye. And then for the last coat of mascara, I'm just going to really try to separate them as much as possible, which I'm using the Rimmel London Scandaleyes Wow Wings in the shade Extreme Black. Since that one highlighting shade in the palette was way too dark for my skin tone, I decided to just use the Kylie Pressed Illuminating Powder in the shade Ice Me Out. I'm just applying that to the highest points of my face using an e.l.f. blending brush. Then I'm just going to be blending everything into my skin again one last time using that Real Techniques Beauty Complexion Sponge. And then the last step is lips, so I'm going to be using the Pixie by Petra Matte Nude Lip in the shade Pastel Petal. And then afterwards I'm going to be using the Revlon Kiss Lip Balm in the shade Fresh Strawberry, and that is basically the completed look. So I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Again, this is my least favorite palette that I use, so I was really trying hard to make it look a little bit nicer than what I usually like how it looks. And I'll just see you guys in next time's video. Bye!